This is the Stackin Days Podcast, the podcast about the healing experience of recovery for people of color by people of color. This show is for the purpose of education and connection and is not a replacement for therapy or recovery care. We suggest you seek out the support of a trained professional for guidance with your specific circumstance. I'm your host, Ray Donovan, and I've been alcohol-free since September 2021. Welcome to the show. Hey y'all, I wanted to invite you back into the room, the Stackin Days Podcast. We are early stages in this project, but really excited about the conversation that we have lined up for you today. We got Kiola Raines, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her last name right, joining us today. She is a woman of many hats for sure, and we were talking a little bit earlier about the new year, new you, and what that means for her in her day-to-day life. But I want to hand over the mic to her so she can give you a quick little introduction on who she is, what she's all about, and we'll kind of just get into the conversation from there. Kiola, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, listeners. So some of you may have heard my voice before in a few other spaces. I am a sobriety coach. Wow, it's such a trip to say that because I spent over a decade as a fitness and nutrition coach seeking my own sobriety. And I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would be able to use that foundation of fitness and nutrition and bring that into the sobriety world. So I'm working currently as a coach, helping folks get started on their journey using fitness and nutrition as a support for that recovery journey. So super excited to be here. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. I love the fact that, you're in wellness. And I think that, just in my own journey, I've recognized that the stripping away of alcohol is really kind of just the first step oftentimes in kind of leaning into that wellness journey. So I'm really looking forward to getting into that with you. I'd love to, just for a brief, couple moments, maybe 5-10 minutes, talk a little bit about, your story and some of your struggles, and then how did you kind of segue into a brighter space in your life? So maybe if you can kind of just bring us back to, when it all started, what was the vice, what were some of the hurdles that you kind of faced in just your own struggle, just to kind of, level set for our audience.
Yeah. Wild and crazy.
I bet it always is.
So I assumed that everyone started drinking at 15. That was like for the longest time. I just thought like, isn't that around the age that everybody starts drinking? And I learned in my journey and up until now that no, that's not the case. Some people wait until the legal age, but not me. I grew up in a town with 98 maybe 99% white folks. And so that wanting to belong was there from kindergarten on, just noticing I'm definitely different than everybody here. And so there was that piece and just wanting to belong. And then I also grew up in a household with a parent who was moving through addiction and into their own sobriety journey. So substance use was not foreign to me. Family parties, there was alcohol. It just looked like it was tons of fun. And even though I saw the struggle that my dad went through, I decided at a young age, probably around 9 or 10, I'm drinking. Like I'm doing it. I'm doing whatever because my dad's been gone for 3 days. Whatever he's doing must be fun. I now know that it was a complete nightmare that he was living. But as a kid, I just thought it must be a good time. When we go to Christmas, everybody's loud and they're laughing and they're drinking this Long Island tea my uncle makes. It must be fun. I am doing it. So as soon as I had the opportunity, I took advantage. 15 years old, someone's house party, like their parents got them alcohol or whatever it was, we got our hands on it. And that started a 20-year relationship with alcohol, with 10 of those years being very aware that my relationship with alcohol was no longer healthy, that I was drinking differently than friends and family members were. It was right after I graduated with my bachelor's that I missed work for the first time because I had blacked out the night before and just slept through my alarm. So 2008, was when I really just woke up and said, okay, this is not cool. Like this is now impacting work. That's serious. But it was still another 10 years before I was finally ready to really, really dive into the work that it takes to change that relationship, but even more the work that it takes to heal the parts of me or address the parts of me that I was using alcohol to cope with. So from 2008 to 2018, that 10-year period, there was a DUI, there was an arrest for fighting. I mean, things that like, this is not me. This is not me. After the DUI, I had about an 8-month stint of alcohol-free time, but I was not aware of the importance of fellowship. I had to attend meetings. It's, court ordered, go to AA meetings. I went to one meeting, and at that meeting, I decided I'm not that bad. It's not that bad. Yes, I've just driven my car off the freeway with a 0.15 BAC level. And yes, I've missed work because of drinking and broken relationships because of drinking. And college took me twice as long and graduate school took me twice as long. But I have a master's degree and I have multiple jobs, and I'm looking around this room and I see a bunch of old white folks. So they must have a different problem than I have. And I just never went back again. Wrote down, so this is AA. They can't check. I'm just going to sign off on the rest of these. And made it 8 months on my own with the support of my family, but no one really understanding what that relationship with alcohol was like. And so surely enough, I convinced myself 8 months later, as long as I don't drink on Fridays with the people that I drank with when I got the DUI, I'll be okay. And as long as I don't drink tequila and beer, I'll be okay. So if I just drink wine on Thursdays, then I'll be fine. And if I only drink with this one person, then I'll be fine. All these rules, which lasted probably a couple months. And then it was like off and running, back to the races, full on drinking in my gym while I was teaching classes. I had wine in my water bottle. I mean, just careless, thinking no one noticed. And because no one said anything, I assumed no one noticed. So that went on for a few more years. And it was probably summer 2018, 3 years after getting arrested for a DUI, a year after getting arrested for fighting. I just had that moment of, is this what you're going to do? Are you going to just do this for the rest of your life? Just barely get by. So you checked off the education boxes. You've got all the personal training, nutrition certifications. You got the master's degree. You have the gym you wanted, but you're spiraling down. Like you have all these things that you were working towards, but you're letting them slip through your fingers because you'd rather go in the back of the gym and have a margarita. And I signed myself up for a retreat in 2018. I said, I'm going to go to this women's retreat. I'm not going to drink while I'm there. It was in Cuba. I had it all planned out. It's a healing retreat. It's going to be amazing. As soon as I got there, went straight to the liquor store, got rum, and then was on and running for that whole retreat. But I met a woman at that retreat who was several years into her recovery journey. And she just gravitated towards me, and we shared some things. I talked about my childhood, my dad's addiction. And she said, Kiola, have you guys been to family therapy for that? Or do you just kind of pretend it never happened? And I said, well, we just kind of pretend it never happened, and we don't talk about it. And so that conversation is the light bulb moment for me, that she said, you realize that your dad probably has a lot of guilt around that addiction and in his sobriety. And you realize that that could have impacted you and increased your anxiety and the way you operate, your likeliness to abuse substances. And she was just dropping all these gems. And I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. Pour me another one. I'm just keep drinking through this trip, but you might be right. I'm going to have to check into that. And so that conversation opened my mind up to realize that, damn, my dad's addiction really did have an impact, on me, on him, on the whole family. And maybe this is the root of my anxiety. And maybe this has something to do with why I'm drinking the way I'm drinking. And maybe this is why I can't just quit like that. And I need some support. I'm going to get into some family therapy. And as soon as we got back to the States, she gave me her information for her family therapist, did some sessions there for the first time ever. 20 years later, 25 years later, sat across from my dad and talked about, this is what it was like to grow up in the house with you. And I'm looking at how it affected me and not blaming you, but I have to process this stuff. And so that was in the summer 2018. Around October, I had officially decided, yes, I have a problem. This is nothing new. I need to do something about this. So I'm going to get some help. But I'm going to wait until January because I want to drink through the holidays. And I'm just, it was just this, thinking back now, I'm like, oh, so silly. But I get it. I was in active substance use.
Yeah.
I was afraid of like, who am I going to be? What is my life going to be like? Is it like, what is this all going to look like? So I'll just get through the holidays, and January 1st, that's my day. And luckily for me, it was my day. I walked myself into an AA meeting. I didn't wait another day. I didn't say push it past to the second, third, fourth. I went in that day, walked into a room and asked for help. And here's the difference. The difference this time is that I looked for a meeting in my neighborhood. And at the time I was living in View Park, California. It's actually the number one wealthiest Black community in the US. And so I was like, I'm looking for Black people. I'm going to a meeting with Black people. That's it. Walked in that room, felt at home, never looked back. And that difference is what kept me there. Seeing like the aunties, the uncles, I felt like I was at church, not in the religious aspect, but just like, hey, let me give you a hug. What's your name? Welcome, welcome. Okay, I could do this because I see people who look like me and I see people who sound like me. I can resonate with their shares. So maybe we do have something going on here. And that's the start of my journey, January 1st, 2019. It took me a long time to get there.
Yeah.
20 years of drinking, and 10 of those years knowing clearly from 2008 to 2018. I knew for sure, this is no question, you've been arrested twice. Family is not dealing with you, had a family intervention, had all kinds of, challenges with relationships. And I finally just accepted, I just can't do it anymore. Yeah. Hands up, surrender. Somebody help me out.
That's pretty powerful stuff right there. I mean, 20 years is not a drop in the bucket, No. I mean, that's depending on how fortunate and how long you're able to be on this planet. I mean, that's a good chunk of like your experience, living here.
Yeah.
I mean,
half my life right now. I'm 40, so wow. Half of my life I was drinking.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to that for sure. I mean, and just like the degree of of power and force it takes to move that pendulum in the opposite direction when everything that is holding you where you are, and you're sitting there in October telling yourself, my date will be January the 1st. Yeah. And I love it in the fact you said like that was in fact my date, but it potentially might have not have been your date, right? Had you not been, fortunate enough to have some things line up for you and make those steps. It's interesting also, like, in my own journey, I mentioned this before we got on, I listened to a lot of podcasts to as my kind of, my community. I wasn't walking into the rooms, but I was listening to the shares and the stories of other folks. And they oftentimes say that, look for the similarities, not the differences. I just found it personally, while I was looking for those similarities and listening to those similarities, it was challenging for me in not hearing it from people who looked like me or hearing it from people that sounded like me. So I can imagine the degree of like at least comfort that you felt in walking into that room to see other folks, that reminded you of maybe your auntie or your uncle or your dad or your mom, and so on and so forth, where it was safe. Because oftentimes, we're coming from a place where we're not able to share this with our our families, and our origin families. So to be able to find, those similar faces and voices outside, especially in those early days when it's so hard to start making those baby steps, I can only imagine how comforting that must have been for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There was no way it was going to work any other way. And I know that because I, soon after starting my journey, followed the directions, completely changed the people, places, and things I was around. I let that business relationship go. I just knew there's no way I'm going to run this studio with any passion, energy, effort, and do this recovery thing at the same time. The stress of business ownership, not going to work. I was in a very toxic relationship at the time. I had lost my car, dead broke, like I had nothing to lose. So I was like, I'm leaving. I'm going to go home, and luckily very blessed to have parents who had the space in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood that I grew up in, all the way in the middle of nowhere, and moved there, went to a meeting there. And I was like, nope, this isn't going to be it. Like I'm listening to my sponsor. I'm going to the meetings, but I started driving that 90-minute drive back to LA to go to meetings because that's where I could open up. Those are the stories that I wanted to hear. Those are the voices that I needed to hear. I needed to see that we can do this, that we can overcome this, that we can overcome addiction. And I'm grateful for everyone overcoming addiction. Of course, I'm happy for any person, no matter what your origin, ethnicity, that's fantastic. For myself, I needed to see us doing this. And I don't know whose quote that is, if it's Bill W.'s quote, because I feel like it's an AA saying, look for the similarities, not the differences. I don't feel like one of us made up that quote. And so, because I can have a lot of similarities. Yes, you have 5 siblings like I do, and you got a DUI like I did, and your dad had addiction like mine, and that is great. Where it ends for the world, our world experience, is this outside view. That's great. We have those things in common, and I'm Black. So on top of that, I get treated differently. So I could empathize with you because you have similar experiences to me, but something you will never understand. You will never understand what it's like to walk through the world as a person of color. Yep. And that comes with so many differences, the way we get treated by the world, that just it stops part of the journey for me, for the person to heal, because that's something that's so big that you won't understand, even though you have the same siblings as I do, we're from the same state, you got the same DUI, we used to drink the same drink. This other thing impacts how we show up in the world and how we live our lives so greatly that we need to have a space where it's just us talking about that, or at least I need somebody else in the room. I need one other person in the room in case of emergency.
Yeah. I find that even just the addiction itself, it's such a lonely place, addiction is, right? And, in order to kind of combat that force, you almost need to find the community. And we know how challenging it is for us to be able to be a part of, broader communities that don't look like us. So I agree with you. I mean, and that's part of one of the reasons why I even wanted to do this, is just, have a place where we can kind of just highlight the experiences of folks who look like us, as it relates. Because, I mean, again, I'm all for, everyone getting sober. I think it's one of the greatest gifts that anyone can give to themselves. It's just harder to do it sometimes when you don't have examples to make it okay. For you to pursue it as well. So I love, 90-minute drive, hats off to you in doing that. I know that in itself probably was, a management exercise.
In a borrowed car, I would borrow my parents' car. Cause again, I lost everything. So irresponsible. Over not paying parking tickets, parking my car in places, forgetting it was parked there. Then the ticket came. I had no money to pay the ticket, didn't pay the ticket. Registration comes, registration's past due, driving around with no registration, expired lights, just irresponsible. And that's the part where it's like, I was convincing myself, you got these degrees, you got these certifications, you're good to go, but you're not taking care of your daily shit that you need to take care of. Yeah. So it was just trying to balance this, like, 2 different people. I was like, I want to be free. I just want to be free. And it's, I need somebody who I can relate to help me get through it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, that's a journey, 20 years, you push through the noise, and you're moving to the other side. What were some of the, other than your 90-minute drive to your meeting in LA, what were some of the early tools that worked for you in kind of your very kind of specific, need state, as a woman of color trying to confront, her addiction?
Yeah. I used everything that at the time my sponsor offered. So I went to AA because I thought that that was all there was. I had never heard of Smart Recovery. Reframe didn't exist. I think Sober Instagram was maybe starting off its journey. And so I went to AA. And so they offered, of course, get a sponsor, go through the steps, come to meetings. Going to those meetings as often as I could, checking in with my sponsor on a regular basis. We had a set time, 2:00. I remember 2 p.m. Text me 2 p.m. every day, no matter what. Send me a message or call. That's it. So having that accountability check on a daily basis was helpful. And then sitting with him and working through the 12 steps. So those were, I'm a student, lifelong learner. So he essentially was giving me homework. Read this section, come back, let's talk about it. Read this section, do this exercise, let's talk about it. Read this next section, answer these questions, reach out, make amends. He gave me assignments, and that's what worked for me. I love learning. You give me a homework assignment to read or do something, I'm going to do it. And in that process, I was able to understand why I was drinking. I understood the resentments that I was holding on to, the anger that I was holding on to. Once I identified that, it was a wrap for me. I'm a fast learner. I said, oh, okay, that's what it's not even the alcohol. It's me. I need to let go of some things. I need to free myself of some things. And if I do that, then I won't be needing alcohol to cope with daily life. So those tools through the 12-step process in the early days, now it's fellowship, and more fellowship. So I threw myself into Sober Instagram, meaning that I talked about my journey openly on a regular basis. I wasn't expecting anything to come of it. I just knew that the way that I had already operated on social media, I was already openly sharing. I would already talk about, things that were happening in my life. So let's just put this piece out there too, because I'm talking about everything else, but I'm kind of keeping this little secret to myself. So for me, the best thing to do was just lift the veil and say, hey, everybody, I'm starting this journey. And I'm going to tell you guys about it because I'm not ashamed. I'm not ashamed of it. And that's what would have kept me quiet was shame. So facing it right away, putting it out there was helpful. But I now it's the responsibility that I have to show up and hold space for folks, coaching and just knowing that I need to stay on top of my education on addiction, on alcohol, on stages of change. I have to stay on top of that in order for me to be the best coach. So now that education piece is what's keeping me going. Everyone is going to be different in what they need in the journey. There are a few core things I think that are helpful, fellowship of some kind, and then healing or, therapy, counseling, coaching of some kind, and then showing up and being of service in some way.
Yeah.
If you can get those three into your process in whatever way works for you, you have a good chance of staying sober or harm reduction, because there are people now we're acknowledging that not all use is abuse. Not all use. There are people who have a glass of wine. They move on with their lives. They're not thinking of when am I going to get the next glass of wine? There are people that, do things every now and then, and they have a healthy, happy life. For us that are overusers or abusers, we are choosing to abstain from that on a daily basis. And for the person who maybe has a healthy relationship, you still want to be in fellowship. You still want to be of service. You still want to have some kind of way of counseling, coaching, so that you can maintain that healthy relationship if you can create one. And that's something that there's no such thing as harm reduction in 12-step. It's all or nothing. And I like to see that we're opening up this experience to include harm reduction as well. So what's working for me, fellowship, some kind of coaching or sponsorship, and then being of service. That's what's kept me here.
Yeah.
Right now, really the service part is what's keeping me here.
I mean, those are powerful motivators, right? Especially when you're coming from a space of clarity, right? As opposed to being underneath this cloud that, some of us were walking around underneath for, decades. I know in my case, your case as well. I also want to just, give some space to kind of your initial, well, first of all, thank God for that woman that you ran into in Cuba.
Yes.
That's pretty cool. Was she a
So
sister or?
no, she's a white woman. I call her my fairy godmother because, she just really came out of nowhere and just spoke these truths into me. We're still in touch.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's definitely my fairy godmother for sure.
That's
I'll
awesome.
send her the link so she can listen to this. She's going to just get a kick out of it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I also wanted to touch on that conversation you had in family therapy with your dad. I feel like, in my experience and from what I've heard, so much of kind of what has, gotten us to the point that we need to fight through is based on what has happened to us in some of our more kind of formative, years. I mean, what did it take for you to kind of start unpacking that with your father? I'm sure it wasn't easy for him, right?
Yeah.
And you, in a lot of ways, were probably leading that. But I mean, what was that like to really confront, those issues, out in the open? I mean, I'm assuming there was a degree of relief that you exited that room with, but at the same time, it must have been nerve-wracking.
Yeah. So I have to rewind it back. My personal one-on-one very first therapy experience is when that seed was planted that something wasn't right at home. So I talked about, I grew up in the house and my dad had a drug addiction and he had gone to rehab a couple times and, yada, yada, yada. I'm just kind of like moving along. The therapist is like, oh, okay, so your mom was a single mom for a while. And I was like, no, my parents have been together since they're 15. There was no single mom. She said, but you said your dad went to rehab a few times. And I was like, oh, wow. I'm 32, I think, or 31, just for the first time realizing, oh, damn, my mom, wow.
She was carrying
yes,
it. She was carrying it.
3 separate times where she had 3 kids and then 3.5 kids, just, wow, she was at home alone while he was gone dealing with this thing. Never in my life had I put those pieces together. So that kind of started that might have impacted me. And then moved on with my own stuff that I was talking about. So then 2018, maybe like 4 years later, this second reminder comes of, okay, that happened. Did you guys talk about it? Have you ever, processed that? No? Let's get into session. So inviting him to therapy was already like, okay, I mean, let's do this. I've always been the kid. I have 4 siblings. I've always been the kid that was like ride or die for my dad. I'm the one that was like 12 years old, like, Dad, you need to quit doing drugs, like, get your shit together. Like, just full on, this is over. I don't know many 12-year-olds that confront their parents in that way, but I had seen it for long enough.
You were ready to take this thing on from a young age.
I was like, let's do this, even though I've already decided I'm going to do drugs too, right. But you need to stop doing them. So inviting him, my mom was always on it. My mom was like me, like, she had realized the damage that had been done. She was open to it, but just didn't know what to do about it. The Black community, there wasn't a lot of talk about going to therapy and family therapy. That's just not something that is common or was common. Things are changing. Thank goodness things are changing. Everything is just like, go to God, just ask Jesus for some help and pray on it. That's great too. That is great, but we need therapy. And so he accepted the invitation and it was 100% a relief. He and my mom both came, and just to be able to tell them directly, this is what it was like growing up in the household. And, this is how it impacted me. And he definitely was very, straight faced. And now, because it's a even deeper relationship that I'm in recovery, I can see the strong Black man that he is softening up to accept, one, my daughter loves me. She doesn't hate me. She's not mad at me. She's trying to heal and recover from this. And 2, there's a part of this that I'm responsible for. So like swallowing that and I'm sure that's challenging and painful, but also I'm here for hope. I'm not here to say you did this and that and like shame on you. I'm like, damn, we made it through that. Like, that's amazing. Look at us. But also we have to acknowledge it. We can't pretend it didn't happen. If we want to grow from it, we have to acknowledge it, look at it, say, whoa, that shit was crazy. Now how do we clean this up? How do we repair this and move forward? So he was very open to the experience. I think it took him a while to process it, that, okay, she's actually confronting this. She's not going to let it just be swept under the rug. She's going to face it head on. So that means I have to face it head on. And once he realized that I wasn't like playing around, I wasn't going to do this for a little while, and then saw me in my recovery journey where I would still confront him. Like, Dad, did you do the 12 steps? You didn't do it right. I didn't hear you going to me. So then at the beginning of my journey, I was a little arrogant about like, well, I'm in 12 steps, and I didn't see you doing it that way. Now I realize that he had his own journey and that worked for him, and I can respect his journey. And now we can do this recovery thing together. He comes on to Clubhouse and does Clubhouse rooms with me. He'll be in my Reframe meeting next week and the loved ones meeting. So he's like a part of my recovery journey. And he and my mom have their own couples therapist now. Like, it's just
That's
like
awesome.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
It's not a lot of 65-year-old Black men in therapy. There need to be more. And for me, watching him do that, that gives me hope that he might tell a friend, like, okay, this therapy thing isn't so bad. Like, it's not just telling a stranger all your business. That's not what therapy is.
I know, right? It's like, we're so secretive and trying to like make sure that our house looks like it's always together, when sometimes in reality it's falling the fuck apart, and and everybody actually knows it, but you're trying to prop it up. I mean, I also love the fact that he's now part of your journey. You're part of his journey. Something that I've been thinking about a lot, even in my own journey, is what does vulnerability look like, and what role does it play in our healing, right? And and it sounds like for your dad, he had to open up and be vulnerable to the conversation, to the relationship, right? And you as well. And that's also something that I feel like I personally have struggled with, is my own degree of vulnerability. And I know that's also similar. You talked about, Black men being in therapy. One of the reasons why I'm 42 years old. Therapy is part of my story. But I just never I always used to say, if someone thinks they need therapy, then they need therapy. But I don't think that I need therapy. You know what I mean? Until I actually recognized that I did need it. And now that I've been in it, it's been able to me to like tap into parts of myself that I've never touched, never felt comfortable touching, and you talked a little bit about softness earlier. I think that that's also something that folks need to come to terms with, is like, what does it look like for me to be soft? Because I think that you can be soft and strong in parallel, right? But it's hard to be authentically strong if you're not able to also tap into that softness. So I just love the fact that you and your dad were in that room together with your mom and had that moment, because I think that is also just as important in kind of just healing the fissures of the past, is like acknowledging that everything wasn't always okay. And and that's okay that it wasn't okay, because we're here now and we have an opportunity to do something different moving forward.
Yeah, you hit it right there. Everything wasn't always okay, and it's okay because we're doing something about it.
Yeah, we can all do something about it, I guess, right? So let's move forward a little bit here. So let's talk about Kiola in her new life, where she's paying her parking tickets, where she's, she's doing all the responsible things that one hopes that they can do in their adult life. What does your life look like today? I mean, you obviously, fellowship service is huge for you. I want to talk a little bit about your practice. I want to talk a little bit about how you're kind of reaching back and, bringing folks up, to live a fulfilled life that you've obviously been able to step into. So just let me know what that looks like, because I want to make sure that we capture some of that sunlight today as well.
Oh, yes. It's just so funny. So when I think about it, I'm like, that's hilarious. I literally have not gotten a parking ticket in 4 years. So I'm like, damn, was it just alcohol? Yeah. I mean, I would be irresponsible. I'd be too tired. I wouldn't set the alarm. I would be like, oh, I'll move my car in the morning, then not wake up. Just careless. Careless. And now that is not the case. It's just such a trip when you think about it. Like, oh my gosh, okay. Something so simple, like taking care of your responsibilities. I used to tell myself that, like, oh, my car's just messy because that's just like who I am. And the truth is, like, I can't stand messes. I love that my car is clean all the time now. Like, Nathaniel, my partner, he is probably too much for him because I'm like, we need to vacuum the car, like I get shit done. I do what I say I'm going to do, and there's no struggle to do it. It took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree. I dropped out 3 times, 3 separate times, dropped out, went again for 2 years, dropped out again, went for a year. 3 different times I dropped out of college. I think it's like a 3% chance of graduating if you drop out. So I am in that category. That's exciting. But it took me 8 years to get that degree. It took me 3.5 years to get a 2-year master's degree, all because I would just tripping and slipping. Something would put me back. So I am a persistent person. And I do persevere, but I look back and think like everything took me so much longer. And there might have been, anxiety playing a role in that, some attention challenges playing a role in that. But now I can address those things. I don't just drink away the fact that like I'm losing focus, or drink away the fact that I'm a little anxious and I'm overwhelmed. Now I accept I'm anxious, I'm a little overwhelmed. Okay, what do I need to do in order to get back on track? So peace and serenity, like, the 12-step book says, you will know serenity and we will know peace. I am obsessed with peace. Peace was never one of my top 5 values. I love quiet, order. I love calm. I used to thrive, or tell myself that I was thriving in chaos. I was a bartender. I just put myself in chaotic situations. Now I'm running the opposite direction. I realize that I'm really an introvert. I have a big personality, but my energy is refilled when I'm alone in that quiet time. I'm not refilled in crowds. Like, again, I used to tell myself, get out, go to every single party, every single thing, just go to all the stuff, killing my energy. And when I was invited to do my first workshop, I think it was through Sober Mom Squad. So Sober Mom Squad, the founder is Emily Paulson. She reached out to me and said, hey, I see, you're talking about nutrition a lot. I know you're a nutrition coach, you're a movement coach. I see you doing all these things. And you've got a couple years of sobriety. Would you be interested in teaching a workshop, goal setting, something like that for the community? So that kicked off me literally coming into this sober space, using my education to help support sobriety. And then that led to another program, reaching out, who they have a program for women. It's a small program. They focus on movement, specifically Pilates and yoga. Also wanted a nutrition piece. So I'm like, yeah, I'll bring that nutrition piece. Awesome. That it just kept on snowballing. Reframe reached out, come teach a workshop. We want to do a goal setting workshop. We saw you did it here. We saw you did it there. Bring it into the community. And then that opened up the opportunity for coaching. I did one workshop and people started reaching out for coaching automatically. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. Let me see if this is like, do I really want to do this? Because I am a new mom. My son was just a little over 1 at the time. I had checked out. I was like, I'm sober. I'm a stay-at-home mom now. I'm retired. I'm not coaching anymore. But the community called. And there was no way I was going to say, no, I'm not going to do what I love to do and do it in the sober community. Like, sign me up. And then it just now booked out, over a month of booked out, and just, I turned off my coaching queue. I have 40 clients I'm working with right now. It's like,
so are you doing this all just yourself, your own sole practice right now with 40 clients?
No, I work through Reframe. So okay. Reframe is that I coach with. And then I actually just signed on with Recovered Life, who will be my brand manager. And so I'll slowly be transitioning to individual practice, and I'll keep a few people on Reframe. That's just like, my heart is there for that community. And I mean, I love all the different communities. That's the community I'm the most active in. And I don't really see myself like taking my meetings away from the Reframe community. It's just, I have a women's meeting there. I have a BIPOC meeting there. I have a newcomers meeting. I love that space. And then I'll pop in and do workshops in the other communities, but my coaching will be through Recovered Life, which allows me to have my practice, my rates. And then Reframe, I feel like is me being of service there. I mean, I'm being paid to be there, but I need to be able to set my rates at my, gotta pay for these degrees. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, I'm extremely grateful. It's not luck and it's not blessing. I worked for this. I did the work education wise, no matter how long it took me to get it, I got it done. And I chose to recover. And because I chose to recover, opportunities opened up for me to do what I love, encourage movement and a healthy relationship with food, and put that into the sobriety space. This is something that I've earned. I know a lot of people say I'm so lucky and I'm so blessed and these are blessings, but it's not luck. It's work. I have to work on being sober. And so I've earned my position to be able to help other people in their journey using the tools that I know will keep you on track. So very grateful. That is the right word. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity. And my life is happy.
That's awesome.
I'm happy.
I tell you, you follow you on Instagram. It's no doubt you're happy. That
I didn't used to be, man, I didn't used to be. I used to say like, I want to be happy. Like, how can I be happy? I'm struggling. I was always loud and I was never shy. And so that might have looked to some people like, wow, she's, so happy, but I wasn't. It was very dark. Now I'm like, life is good. There's shit still happens. Believe me, we get, flat tires like everybody else, run late like everybody else. I still have those same 4 siblings. There's always somebody's mad at somebody. It's just bound to happen, but I'm not in the center of it anymore. So, I'm kind of like, I'm on the outside looking in and, it's just, I can address things. I can face things that I used to run away from or be aggressive in my defense towards. Now I'm like, well, let's talk about this. I actually got all my sisters into therapy with me as well. So we have 4 sisters. We have our own therapist that we're working with to heal those relationships that were impacted by our childhood, my drinking, each individual person's reactions to our childhood. And so now we're coming together to heal that as well. So
I mean,
life is good.
So amazing how the ripple effect that comes with one, taking the reins of their own healing and how that subsequently, can cascade out to the folks around you. I think that for our community, like we just need healing, broadly speaking, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And, wherever we can get our hands on it, it's only beneficial for our community. So I love the fact that, that you've taken the reins on your healing, you're passing that on to others, and you've seen the fruits of that, even with, the folks in your family, from your dad, your mom, your 4 sisters. I mean, that's generational shift right there in, how your family walks through the space that we've been fortunate enough to be able to walk through. I think that's, incredibly, incredibly, powerful. So, hats off to you. You've done a phenomenal job, and I know, because as I said, I follow Kiola on Instagram. She continues to be a phenomenal job, and I know that Instagram's like where you do like the fun stuff, So, yeah. But just so that folks know where to find you, maybe just give them a quick shot. I know that you're backed all the way up through February now on coaching, but I do want folks to know where they can catch a little bit of your light. Where do you want to send them?
I will send you to Recovered Life, recoveredlife.com. So Recovered Life is another community, and that's where I'll be taking clients starting in March for one-on-one coaching. We have a few packages there. I encourage folks to commit to 90 days if you're going to work with a coach, a therapist, a counselor, even a sponsor. I mean, if you go to AA, you need to commit some time to working with somebody. Smart recovery, work with a mentor. But recoveredlife.com is where you can find me. I have a meeting on Recovered Life Monday mornings, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's called the Empower Hour. We're focusing on goal setting for the week, intention setting for the week, and also action, right? Because goal setting is fantastic. How are you going to get there? So we talk about the action plan to achieving those goals. And of course, I throw in a little bit of movement and nutrition encouragement as well. So Recovered Life is the place to find me for meetings and for one-on-one coaching. And then for my wild and crazy sober life, just Kiola Raines on Instagram, Kiola Raines on Clubhouse. I have a few Clubhouse spaces that you can drop into as well. Clubhouse is an audio app. It's essentially like a live podcast. We have a lot of fun over there. I do have a meeting that is specifically for Black women. So we have a meeting on Wednesdays in the Sobriety in Black Club on Clubhouse. Hopefully you'll have Hanif on here soon. But yeah, check me out. recoveredlife.com is the place to find me.
Cool. All right. I got two last questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up, Kiola. One is, I'll say, is a softball. The other one is maybe not so soft. Okay. So I'll start with the not so soft to start with.
I drank for 20 years, so I'm pretty tough.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do it then. So the first question is, we talked a lot about our community. We talked a lot about, the support of our community around us. And I was asked this question. My therapist asked me this question. She's probably will listen to this episode at some point. So I wanted to give her a shout out. How at the time when you were in the depths of your struggle, would someone who would otherwise want to help you know that you weren't okay?
When I was in the depths, how would they have known that I wasn't okay?
Yeah.
They would have caught me in the back of my gym that I owned as a health professional, smoking cigarettes and drinking wine out of a water bottle. That would have been one inclination. Something's not right here. The woman who just taught my 5 a.m. boot camp class is smoking cigarettes in the back of the gym, drinking wine. What the hell? Yeah. That would have been one sign. I mean, then the DUI, Kiola fighting, punching someone. What? Something's going on. And my family knew there was a problem when one of my sisters came over, saw a wine bottle on my nightstand. So that was a sign, she's drinking wine in bed or waking up and drinking. So she's got wine on her nightstand. Something's not right. The people I was hanging out with, just the aggressive personality. Those are a couple.
Yeah.
Just to name a few.
I'm sure we all have a whole bunch of them, but I appreciate that. Yeah. And so the last question I have is for someone who's sitting there listening to this, and saying to themselves, like, I also have recognized that, this is something that's not serving me. I have a problem. But I don't know what my first step can be, what it should be. What would you say to that person if they reached out and asked you, Kiola, what do I do?
So first step, definitely admitting and accepting that you have a problem and you want to change. Second step is find your community. Find the community that you can show up in on a regular basis for fellowship. So if that is a virtual community, find that space. If it's an in-person community, find that space. This is not something that you want to take on alone. If the community starts off with a therapist or a counselor, someone, at least one other person that you're going to be checking in with consistently, it's holding space to hear you, holding space to uplift you and encourage you. You have to find somebody to do this with. So decide which community that's going to be, and then dive head first into that community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kiola, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I know that you're extremely busy right now. So thank you for taking the time out to sit with me and just kind of talk through this and talk shop. And, I love learning about your story even more so now than what I've known up until this point. So I really do appreciate it.
Yes. Now you know how wild and crazy I really am.
I couldn't have imagined it, but it's fantastic.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Stackin Days Podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with the show, email me at rdg@stackindays.com or follow us on Instagram at Stackin Days. If you like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, and by all means, share it with a friend who you think needs to be invited into the conversation. Until we meet again, be well, one day at a time. Hey guys, quick heads up. We've been really thrilled with the response that we've been getting to the show, and I just wanted to let you know that from here on out, we're going to be releasing episodes weekly. So catch us here every Wednesday from now on.